Hey guys, welcome into another YouTube video. In this video I'm just going to be going over a super cheap rig build like this one that I've got a photo of here. This is a 8x6600 rig and it's just on a riserless motherboard, and yeah, it's super simple. These are all the parts. So the couple of things that are different here. So for one, the motherboard is different. I paid like 180, 190, maybe around $200 for the motherboard that I have. But in my opinion, this other one that I found is better. And the other thing that's different is the 1200 watt server PSU plus breakout board, which costs $177, versus what I've got on my one is a 750 watt EVGA 80 plus gold. Obviously you're going to have better efficiency with an 80 plus gold power supply than some random, well not random, but a 1200 watt server power supply from AliExpress. Yeah, so these cost around about 200 on special. Yeah, and then everything else on here is pretty much the exact same as what I used on my rig. A couple of notes. There's no frame. Don't necessarily need a frame for a rig, especially with cards this light. They just stand up in the PCIe slots. But obviously, if you want to have a frame, then you just add it. You know, build something custom or buy something. You will have splitters and splitters if you get the 750 watt EVGA gold power supply. So if you don't like that, go for a 1200 watt server power supply. It's actually cheaper. The other point is this mSATA SSD, you will need an adapter to flash it. Just to flash Hive OS onto it. As you can see, it's extremely cost effective, this rig, because that's all you need. $385 New Zealand dollars for this rig, or 262 US dollars for this rig. Then the 86600s on top of that, obviously, brings the entire total to 4,777 New Zealand dollars, or 3,250 US dollars. Yeah, okay, getting into the parts here. So, just a few days ago, the other model, the 2-fan model of this, was the same price, $549. Unfortunately, as of today, they're out of stock, so this is the single fan model. If you can get the dual fan model of this card for the same price, then obviously do that. When it's in stock, the next price up's like 589 or 570 or something, but it's a gigabyte model, and I don't specifically like gigabyte models. The models that I do like are ASRock, MSI, Sapphire Pulse, and Hellhound. Yeah, there's probably other good models, but those are the only ones that I know of. I know the power colors get hot on the memory because they don't have a backplate, and the XFX uses a little bit more power. Yeah, so this is one of the potential cards you could put in it, models of card, or you could get a dual fan one. So this is the motherboard. It's a 8 GPU riserless motherboard. Super cheap. Comes with a cheap and nasty CPU. I don't actually own this motherboard, so I don't know how good this CPU is. I presume that it's good enough to run these 8 GPUs. You know, it's designed for this. I've never had any problems with riserless motherboards, like mining specific motherboards. They're all designed to do this one thing. It's not specifically a tough task for the motherboard. It's just got to perform as intended, which I assume this one will do. You can see here it's got 6 slots of 6 pins. So the one annoying thing about this board is those 6 pins are all over here, whereas like they're going to be quite far. You notice the direction of these PCIe slots means all the cards are going to be facing the same way. So Some of them are going to be quite hard to say reach a splitter from this card here all the way to this slot over here. So yeah, keep that in mind. That's why I've priced in some 30 centimeter splitters as opposed to the usual like 15 or 20 centimeter splitters. But yeah, anyway, I hope to get one of these boards at some point, but I just don't have a need for it at the moment, so it's it'd be a bit weird to just buy it for the sake of buying it. Has the specs here somewhere, but I'm pretty sure it was about 80 mil between the cards. Yep, 80 millimeter between each of the slots, which is huge. If we look at this photo here, this is 50 millimeters. Obviously there's barely any space. If you had all MSI mech models, they would pretty much be touching, I think. Yeah, so 50 mils, not so great. Add another 3 centimeters in there and you are looking good. So yeah, so this also comes with a CPU, and it's under a heatsink that doesn't have a fan by the looks of it, so presumably the power draw on this motherboard is actually really low as well, so that's a good thing for efficiency, although I haven't tested it so I can't say it for sure. These come with 8 splitters as well, but that won't actually be enough, and they won't be long enough probably, depending on whether you go for a server power supply or the 750 watt power supply. If you go for the server power supply, then they will be enough, because you've got 12 breakout board, so you've got 8 cards, 1 for each, and then you've got 6 of these slots here, so you just need to use a splitter for a couple of those, and that'll be easy as. Next up, you really only need a super cheap and simple MSATA. I have this exact one, 32 gigabyte. I bought a couple of them for my this rig here. You can't actually see it, it's underneath the graphics cards, really well hidden away. But yeah, I got a couple of these, and yeah, they do the intended job that they're designed to do. So super easy. If you want to have the option to, at a later date, switch it for Windows, then you probably want to go for a 64 gigabyte one. If you really don't care at all, you could even go for a cheaper 16 gigabyte one, which would be a couple of dollars cheaper again. But yeah, I just went for the 32 gigabyte when I did mine. Next up is some cheap and dirty SODIMM RAM. It takes DDR3, and generally you'd go for 4 gigabytes of SODIMM RAM. Just pretty much anything. It's designed to go for like laptops, notebooks, but that's just how they design these motherboards. The slot here, they just take SODIMM RAM, laptop RAM. You can see where is it, hiding in there somewhere. There should be a good photo. It's that there, but in the spec sheet it says SODIMM RAM and it says DDR3. Wherever it says that, yeah, memory insert DDR3, yeah. So supports 1660. Oh, sorry, that's just all the models of cards, but yeah, DDR3 memory slot. So yeah, anything, just cheap as, doesn't matter too much. Next up is the server power supply. So I do use a lot of these. They function as expected unless you put, I think it's about probably 800 watts or more through them, and they start screaming at you, which is fine. It's like they're not dying, even though they sound like they're dying. It's just because it's got this tiny little fan here for all the cooling, and it has to spin that very fast in order to cool this thing down. Yeah, so it's gonna scream. And the other thing you'll notice with this board, It doesn't have any other power connectors in it other than these six pins here. So there's no motherboard slot, there's no CPU slot, so you don't have to worry about any adapters to the server power supply. You just have to plug all the 6 pins in and plug all the cards in. Yeah, that came up to like 177 or something, so yeah, not too bad. I've got them cheaper before, so I mean, if you shop around for a deal on AliExpress, there's heaps of other ones. And yeah, I have bought all these parts from AliExpress before, and I have had one server power supply fail. And it's probably a little bit cheeky, but what I did is I just ordered another power supply from the exact same seller, and then when it arrived, I took a video of the faulty one and said it's faulty. So the seller that sold me the power supply that lasted for like 2 weeks still refunded me in the end. AliExpress is really good with refunding disputes. Pretty much if you don't accept whatever dispute they offer, like say they wanted me to send the product back to them in China, which would cost me like $150 alone to send it back to them in China. Then I told them that. I said, no, can't do that. And once it elapsed like the 60 days or something without a settlement, then they just automatically refunded it through like AliExpress's disputes process. So yeah, a little bit cheeky by like ordering another one and then saying that wasn't working, but they only really, because they don't warranty any of the goods, it just, if it works when it shows up, then it works when it shows up, you know. They don't care what happens to it after that, but that's why it's so cheap, AliExpress. So that was my little way to get around one of the power supplies dying. Sorry, and when it died, nothing bad happened, it just stopped giving power. Yeah, and then this is the alternative. If you don't trust AliExpress power supplies, just get a 750 watt 80 plus gold EVGA is preferable, because we know that they have enough 8-pin ports here, and they actually come with the cables for it. You can see PCIe cables, 2 700 and then 2 700 850, which is daisy chained. So yeah, you'd actually have to use 2 less splitters for that one than you would if it had if none of them were daisy chained. Yeah, but if you've got a power supply that's all daisy chained cables, you need even less splitters again, but then you might need some extenders. Yeah, so I did put this power supply on my rig here because I want this to be efficient. This was like, I built this rig with the intention for it to be efficient. So yeah, I used a 80 plus gold power supply. Yeah, next up is 10 pieces of 30 centimeter splitters, because these PCIe slots are quite far away from these slots here, so 30 centimeters should be able to do most of them. If not, you might have to either like double link some splitters or just do some like clever maneuvering. For one thing, there's only 6 slots here, so if you power like this one and this one and then this one and this one, this one and this one with splitters, then you don't need a splitter to go to the last one or something. You don't really need, because there's you'd still need a split off to power the 2 GPUs, but that would be splitting from one here. You wouldn't need a splitter to get all the way back to one of these for that card. But I mean, yeah, you probably have a little bit of difficulties reaching the cables if you're doing it that way. If you've got a server power supply, obviously it's going to be really easy. I just prefer putting the same card on the same power for the riser. So obviously with a server power supply, a riserless motherboard, you want to line like this card up with one of these slots, so that you're getting like an equal power distribution. But given that there's only 6 slots here anyway, that kind of ruins that whole idea. 8 cards, but only 6 slots, so you can't have like one for each. But yeah, is what it is. I still think this is better, like having this spacing as opposed to like the regular one that I have, even though this makes it a bit easier on the splitters, and even this is a crazy mess of splitters. Yeah, so that's the splitters. They're a bit longer, 10 of them, more than you need. You probably get away with the 6 pieces, but I'm just priced in 10. And then last thing is a Wi-Fi dongle, making sure that you get one that says integrated no CD. I've had one show up before. I didn't realize it was going to happen. I think it was one of these types, and it's actually got a disc in the back. They expect you to install the driver for it. I was like, oh wow. Okay, I guess I'll put that in a drawer and never see that ever again. But these work perfectly. Never had any issues with them. It doesn't really need to do a whole lot. Inside this thing's just like a cable, and it receives the signal, sends the signal. It's perfectly adequate for the job. Never had any of them fail. I have physically broken one, like snapped this plastic part off, but it still works. Actually, I think it's the one on that rig. I can't quite see it. It's just down in the bottom left here, but it doesn't stick up anymore because the joint there's been snapped, but it's all good. Yeah, that's the last part, and it is super cheap. Only $385 to make the whole rig. Some people spend like $1,000. If you look at like, I won't go to any of the sites, but there are websites where they sell like pre-made rigs and stuff, and even just rigs without cards, and they do go for like between $1,000 and $2,000, sometimes more than that dollars. Yes, they usually have like nice color themes, or they've got power supplies and risers for 10 cards or whatever, and then they can take high power cards. But like realistically, if you're just starting out or you just want to go really efficient, like this works for 6600s. With this 750 watt power supply, you could mine Flux, ETH, and Ergo. You couldn't really mine Raven, you'd be a bit over the limit, and you can't dual mine ETH plus TON, although I might give it a try at like a lower core clock or something, but that's I wouldn't recommend anyone else try it. But with the 1200 watt server power supply, you can do everything. You don't have to worry about any of that. Yeah, so if you wanted to go a bit easier on everything, but obviously you'll be using a little bit more wattage. My rig is using 410 watts for all 8 cards and all the system as well. So yeah, maybe if you go for this server PSU, might be using maybe 450, maybe 475. I couldn't say for sure without testing it. Might do a video testing it in the future, but yeah, that's pretty much all I have for this video. So hopefully this helps some people, show how cheap you can actually make a rig. Obviously another last point to note is you can make it even cheaper by buying second-hand parts. For example, I recently picked up a 6600 for $460, including shipping. So yeah, you can get deals on the cards themselves, obviously, but you can also get like random bundle deals of like parts. Like you might get like a power supply and have some other, like the person might have some other random stuff lying around, like an MSATA or some RAM, Wi-Fi dongles. People might just, if they're secondhand, they just kind of throw them in with deals and stuff. So you can kind of negotiate some good deals on Facebook Marketplace and stuff if you want to try and be cheap and get the absolute cheapest rig possible. So yeah, that's cheap as rig. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel if this helped you out in any way, and have a great day. See ya.